So I'm Jason.
I'm just happy to be here.
This is when you say I'm Lucas. Come on.
You're not talking to nobody,
Okay.
motherfucker.
Right.
How am I supposed to
Just say I'm
here?
Lucas. Just say I'm Lucas. Okay, fine. We'll forget the I'm Lucas
You can
part.
tell everybody who I am.
Okay. I'm Jason and this is Lucas. And we're with LNF Services, and this is a training video mostly for our guys, but we thought we'd make it available for anybody who wanted, had some questions about when is the right time to replace an air conditioning or heating system. And the video is all about the ethics of selling new systems. And I say ethics because in our industry, it's very, very common for businesses to have their entire business model set up on the idea that in order to do good, you need to sell somebody a new system. And repair is just not really on their list of options unless it's a super easy in and out repair or under warranty. It's so common, in fact, that a lot of customers, we go to their homes, have an immediate kind of wall up. You know, when you walk in the house, you have to be careful about the words you say. You can walk up to a system sometimes and look at it and know immediately they need a new system. But the very quickest way to have someone not buy a new system is to walk up to them and say, you need a new system. And a lot of that is, people are hoping that they can be fixed. But a lot of it is that people are just a little bit nervous about somebody who just comes up without really even doing any work and saying, you need a new system. So that being said, we kind of have some general guidelines about where to draw that line. You want to expand on that, Lucas?
You're doing a pretty good job.
Come on. Lucas is leaving me out here.
I mean, you're good. Go ahead.
Continue. You got to add something. I can't talk the whole time. You just be sitting there.
Well, I'm driving. I'm not just sitting here. I'm driving. It's one of the most important parts of this whole deal right now. If I mess up, we're all dead.
You're right. So, first thing you should ask yourself, if you've been told you need a new system, is, well, how old is the system that you have now? And that matters. That matters a lot. And I'll give you a quick example. Just the other day, I went to someone's house, and all that they needed to get the system operating again was an indoor fan motor. We call it a blower motor. And I told that to the customer. But I also told him the type of blower motor that he has is very expensive. And in addition to the blower motor, there was also some other failures that were looming in the near future. In other words, I could see that his heat exchanger might not finish this heating season. And by law, if we find a hole in the heat exchanger, we have to condemn the unit and disable it. That's just a requirement until it is repaired. A heat exchanger repair is extremely costly. It's not uncommon for heat exchanger repairs to be over $2,500. So if you take an expensive motor, add it to a heat exchanger, plus the fact is one of the other things that we saw that was going to be needed to be replaced in the very near future was a contactor. So those three things together, added to the fact that this was a 13-year-old system, you got to ask the customer, do you want to spend this money repairing your unit knowing you're probably going to have to do it again later on this season, certainly sometime before next season? In addition to those things that I immediately saw just working on the unit, there were probably other failures that were just around the corner as well. For example, it was a little too cold outside to test his refrigerant charge in air conditioning mode. This didn't have a heat pump, it was a gas heat system. If we ran it in air conditioning mode this summer, we might have found that it was extremely low of refrigerant. We possibly had a leaking coil. If we didn't, just law of averages and the age of the system, he was looking at a compressor repair in the near future. And compressor repair is a silly thing to say. You can't repair them. You have to just replace them. So between a heat exchanger, between the compressor, the motor, the contactor, and any other number of things that may be getting ready to go wrong that we just couldn't see right away, you're literally approaching the cost of a new system just in repairs. So in that guy's situation, I presented him with a repair option and a replace option, and I explained to him that the pros and cons are both. This is why you might want to replace, this is why you might want to repair, because ultimately that should be the customer's decision, and we feel like when technicians go in and they don't give that option, they're not really doing what's best for the customer. On the other side of that coin, if you had a system that were 3 years old and had a bad blower motor, chances are that blower motor is under warranty. Chances are that all you're going to be on the hook for in a situation like that is labor. And under that circumstance, there's absolutely no reason to even present a new system option to a customer. Having said all that, I know that's a big spill to give about it. We go behind people all the time on a second opinion who have been told things like, you need a new air conditioner because your refrigerant is illegal. That's a half-truth turned into a whole lie. The refrigerant is not illegal. They don't produce the refrigerant any longer, but you can still buy it. Even if it is extremely expensive, there are replacement refrigerants that can be used in place of the old outgoing refrigerant. So you're not dead in the water over something like, well, your refrigerant is suddenly illegal. I can think of 3 times this past summer that I went to someone's house whose system was operating normally, who had gotten something as simple as a maintenance, and the technician that came out to do the maintenance told them, hey, well, guess what? Your refrigerant's illegal, so you need a new air conditioner. Sorry about your luck. And as far as I'm concerned, that's possibly illegal. If it's not, it is certainly unethical. So we're back to the ethics of selling new units.
I concur.
Is there anything you want to add?
No.
I'm really having a hard time getting
Covered it.
Lucas
It sounds good.
to participate, but I'm doing the best I can.
I mean, it ain't always like a big repair. You know, like, I'm kind of a payment person. So if you got like a $1,800 repair bill every 6 months, in my mind, that's when you're better off to buy a new system.
Yeah, good call. Good call. So you could, if you don't have the money to just outright purchase a new system, and that's getting harder to do. Systems are becoming more and more expensive every year. As a general rule, we say the cost of ownership of a new system is around $1,000 a year on the bottom, maybe $1,500 a year on the higher end, and that really kind of comes down to the average cost of the unit divided out over, say 10 years. So if you are spending a lot of money on a system, it may in fact be better to consider a replacement. I guess one of the biggest complaints that I have about people in my industry is they come to people's homes, it's almost as though they're not trained well enough to know even how to do the repair, and it becomes, well, in their mind, well, I can't fix it, but a new one will sure fix the problem. And that's become a go-to approach in many cases. And their other big complaint I have about this industry is that there are a lot of companies that their entire business model relies on replacing systems as opposed to doing repairs, and that is just not what's best for the customer in most cases, and it's certainly not what's best for the customer's bank account. So, having said all that, sometimes replacement absolutely is the best option. I'm not saying that if a technician tells you you need a new system, they're lying. What I am saying is, if a technician tells you you need a new system, it's only fair that you understand why you need a new system. Why are the options for replacement, not being offered? I feel like if the replacement option is being offered and a good solid explanation of the risks of a repair versus replace are not explained to you, then it's a very, very reasonable thing to ask. And if you are given those things and are educated on those things, you can make a good decision and probably make the right decision. Do you have anything to add, Lucas?
So what are some red flags? How do you know if you're being sold or if you actually need a new system?
I think your intuition is probably the number one red flag. So if you have a gut feeling that the technician's not being honest with you, you're probably right. There are a lot of companies out there that offer what they call a free second opinion. They don't charge you anything to come out and give you a second opinion. And I think it's a good idea to exercise that second opinion. Another red flag is how long did the person spend looking at your system? For example, I've had people tell me that they were told they needed a new one, they had a bad compressor, and then when I said, well, let me go and check, the first thing I had to do was take the top off the unit, and they say, well, the other guy didn't do that. If your technician didn't get down into the unit, unhook the compressor, put his meter leads to it, all he did most likely was try to turn it on and see if it came on. You would probably be really surprised at how often I show up to someone's house and all they needed was a capacitor and not a compressor. And so the technician who came before saw the compressor didn't work and just said, oh, it must be bad. Another big red flag is, how pushy. If your salesman is
let me call my comfort advisor.
Yes, if your salesman is saying things like, let me call a comfort advisor, what that really means is let me call the guy who comes in here and closes the deal, and I'm going to drive to the next house and try to set up the same kind of arrangement. If your salesman is, if you feel like they parked in such a way where they tried to block you in and they're just talking you to death, they're not going to leave your house until you sign something, that's a huge red flag. If they whip out a bunch of paperwork and trying to get you to do a loan application without explaining anything to you about what's actually going on with your system, those are all huge red flags. I'm not going to name the company, but there's a real famous company out there, and their whole motto is we get there really quickly. And what they do is they get someone out at your house who probably doesn't know what he's doing, and he sits there and he stalls to get someone else out there who does know what they're doing, and then they will come and try to close the deal, as it were. Well, you got some other red flags, Lucas? You've turned this into a funny video more than you've turned it into a conversation. I tried to have a conversation.
It's the only way I can get through it without cussing.
Okay. Well, I think this is going to wrap it up. I hope you learned something. I hope this video helped you maybe make a decision. The bad thing about it is that there's a lot of gray area, and there's going to be some things that a technician can find that he might not necessarily be able to explain to a homeowner. I don't expect the average homeowner to understand the refrigeration cycle, or to be able to understand that a compressor can't really be repaired, it has to be replaced. And that can create a little bit of mistrust sometimes between your technician and the homeowner. I guess my biggest piece of advice is go on, research your company, look at their reviews. Do they seem fake? Is a bad review someone who's just mad because they're an unreasonable person? Is a good review just someone who just went on there and said 5 stars at the end? Those kind of reviews right there, it's pretty easy to spot, I think, for most people. Go through, read them, see what kind of company you're calling out to your house, and I think that right there would be step number 1 into making sure that you're getting an actual technician instead of an air conditioner salesman. And until next time, this is Jason, and that's Lucas with L&F Services.